Well, welcome to the Cinnabar. Now today we've got what I think will be a very interesting episode. You see, we're going to be shooting this original 1873 Winchester in 4440 with a Winchester's rare 7-leaf express rear sight. Now I've often wondered when I've seen these in the past if these leafs were calibrated for any specific distance, and I've never been able to find any information that says so. Now I've seen these on rare occasions on 73s, on some 1876s, on some 1886s, usually on rifles that have a lot of options on them, fancy deluxe rifles, and people just kind of wanted all the bells and whistles. But if you think about all the different calibers of 73s, 76s, 86s, and the different trajectories, it's hard to imagine that it was really calibrated for any one distance or any one caliber. And in looking in George Mattis's Winchester sight book, it says they were even optional on 92s, 94s, 95s, and even some of the early automatics, or semi-automatics, the 1905, 1907, 1910s. I've never seen any on any of those rifles, but when you look at the variation in cartridges and calibers for all those, it's pretty hard to imagine how they would have been calibrated. So what we're going to do today is we're going to shoot on target with every one of these different leaves and just see exactly where they hit with this particular rifle and this particular caliber. So stick around, this ought to be kind of fun. So let's take a little closer look at our test rifle for today. This one letters to Winchester's New York agency in 1908. So it's a fairly late production 1873. And of course it letters with the 7-leaf express rear sight, a Beech's combination front sight, or what people refer to as a globe front sight, a set trigger, and 4440. Pretty plain example of a Winchester with a 7-leaf sight. Now this one's not in great high condition. It's pretty honest. The stocks have been refinished. The metal condition is kind of patinaed, but this gun's been shot a lot, and anybody's guess as to why. But it doesn't have a pitted bore, but the lands are pretty weak in it, so it may not be our best test rifle for our sight here, but you know, it's not like the safe's full of these 7-leaf sights. It's the one we got, so that's the one we're going to test out. Let's take a little closer look at this sight now. You can see the 7 leaves there, and this one actually has another option in that you can see those kind of silver colored lines in the leaves. Those were called platina lines, and they weren't on all of them. Those were another special order item. And then the staff here at the end is indexed or marked with a 7, 8, 9, and 10. So while we're 7 leaves, we've actually got 10 notches that we can shoot from on this sight. So without further ado, let's get to shooting. Now, because we recognize this rifle has kind of a weak bore, I went ahead and slugged the bore and found that it's running between about 429 and 430 diameter. So we loaded up some cartridges here with some 430 diameter bullets, 200 grain flat nose, and we're gonna shoot a few of them just to kind of see what one might group up. We're going to crony them because it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be testing this sight if we're scattering shots all over the countryside. So we'll take about 3 shots with some different loads and just see what groups up the best and what kind of velocities we get. Don't think that measured quite right. 179 is, while we won't want to hot rod this thing, 179 might be a bit small, short on velocity. If it was 1179, I'd be plumb pleased. $755. Okay, so that's a pretty light load. I'll shoot one more and we'll go see how we did. Then we'll test a few more out and come back and start shooting for real. Okay, let's check it out. Okay, so not a particularly good group and kind of low. You know, we're probably at about a little under 2 inches and we're shooting at 50 yards, so about 4 inches at 100 yards if we extrapolated that. Now, you notice it is shooting kind of low, and I did some set trigger work on that gun when I first got it and took it out and shot it, and I do remember that first leaf did shoot kind of low. So we'll use the second leaf on the next one and see if we can't get a little better group. Mark these. And we'll just keep working on it till we find something we want, and then we'll set up our big target and start seeing where them leaves will shoot. Okay, so here's our setup. Now that first load that we tested out ended up being our best, so it's not grouping up super tight, but I think it'll still give us good information. We've got a 10-foot target out here at 50 yards, and I'm not sure we're going to stay on that even with all the vertical lift on these sights. But of course at 100 yards it'd be awfully hard to find a 20-foot tall target. So let's get started and see where this thing's going to shoot. So here's our fancy homemade target. We've got a 10-foot board here with a bullseye down here at the bottom, and then we've got hash marks every 1 inch all the way up, and then a red hash mark at each foot, so it'll be easier to pick up. So we've got about 8.5 feet of room to work with here. We'll see if we can keep it on paper. Okay, so let's get started. And of course we kind of expect this first leaf to shoot a little bit low based on what we've seen in the past. We'll set this trigger just because we can. Okay, let's see how we did there. Yep, and true to form, it is low. Okay. Had to kind of look through the grass to find it, actually. Sorry about the road noise. We've had so much moisture that I'm right down here towards the road by the shop, because the road's so muddy we can't get up on the ranch very far without rutting the roads out. Okay, let's see where that one hit. I can almost see it with bare eyes. Yeah, a little right and about, looks like about 12 inches higher. Most of these were shooting off to the right. In fact, everything shot off to the right a little bit when I was testing it out, so we'll expect it to climb up that right side of the target. Okay, number 3. Oh, not much higher than the last one. I'm a little surprised. Okay, let's go to number 4. Okay, that's a little more like I was expecting. I think number 3 was kind of a flyer or operator error. I admit to that kind of thing from time to time, although pretty hard off a bench at 50 yards to be off too far. Okay, so we're at number 5 now. Yep. Okay. Yeah, now we're seeing a pretty good progression there. We'll go to number 6. We're going to have to start raising this again. Okay, now we're up to the point I got to pull my cheek up off of the stock. That's a little odd. Okay, so we're climbing right up it now. Now it's time to get to this 7th staff, and we've got it set on number 7. Okay, now we're getting way up there. Gonna have to raise this even further. There we are. That made kind of a funny sound. Yeah, it's right where we expect it, but it's just off the paper right to the left. Elevation-wise, it's good, but we got a little... Oh, I see. This darn sight is off some. Was off-centered some. That was my fault. Okay, so we're going to try it at 8 now. It's way up there now. That's all the elevation I've got on my stand here. I think we pulled that one back onto the board. Oh yeah, we definitely got our windage back where it belongs. I'm not thinking we're going to get number 10 on paper here. Let's go to number 9 here. And I'm pulling way up here. My cheek way off of the stalk. That should be about it, I think. Yeah, we're right at the top of the board, so number 10 isn't going to be on paper. Pretty interesting. Looks like we just had one kind of flyer there with number 3, but the rest of them are pretty linear, the progression up that paper. Let's go take a look. Okay, so here's the results. Now, the first 3 shots are pretty close together, and we would kind of expect that because the first 3 leaves, there's not a lot of difference in the height of those leaves. So we see there's a 7-inch and a 4-inch difference here, and I might have shot a little high on the second one. Of course, we're not using a tack driver. We'd probably get a little better information if we just had a better shooting rifle than this one. But anyway, then we start to open it up, and it gets pretty consistent on each leaf as we go from here. We're at 14 to the next shot, 16, opened up a little bit here at 19, 16, and then of course we shot off the paper there to the left. I didn't have that slide on the number 7 leaf centered quite right, and then we got back to 14 and 16. So we're averaging about 16 inches per leaf, and if we would extrapolate to 100 yards, we would expect that we'd be about 32 inches roughly with 4440 with those particular loads. So kind of interesting information there on those 7 leaf sights is where they would hit with this particular rifle and load and caliber. Now, if we consider real-world trajectories, we would expect those gaps to just get bigger and progressively larger as we went up the leaves. If you figured these leaves were indexed at 100 yards increments, you know, by the time we got out to the 4th and 5th leaf, we'd have to be shooting way over that target to make it work with this 4440. Now, if we were shooting, say, an 86 and 4590 or even 5110, that trajectories would be completely different. But it's kind of fun to just see where it is hitting with this particular rifle, just because I've never seen anything about where these things are indexed to or calibrated to. And heck, If this thing shot a little better, I'd be tempted to go out and take some of those really long shots, but we might just be wasting ammo. Of course, I don't mind wasting a little ammo to have a little fun too, so maybe we'll do that one of these days when it dries out on the hill a little bit. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, maybe learned a little something. I sure did. Until next time, happy trails from the Cinnabar.